Bilal, the slave, who history crowned. Whenever Umar ibn al-Khattab spoke of Abu Bakr, he would say, Abu Bakr is our master, and he freed our master. He meant Bilal, for a man whom Umar calls our master is a man whom history must pause for. Yet Bilal, dark-skinned, slender, tall, with thick hair, never lifted his head when praise was given. He would lower his gaze and say, I am only an Abyssinian. Yesterday I was a slave. Who was this man who yesterday was a slave and today belongs to all of history? It was Bilal ibn Rabah, the first caller to prayer in Islam, the man who disturbed the idols, one of the great miracles of faith and truth. From the dawn of Islam until today, in every 10 Muslims you meet, at least 7 know the name Bilal. Across centuries and civilizations, hundreds of millions of people have known his story, just as they have known Abu Bakr and Umar. Ask a child in Egypt, Pakistan, China, in the Americas, Europe, Russia, in Iraq, Syria, Iran, Sudan, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, anywhere Muslims live. Who is Bilal? And the child will answer, he is the caller of the Prophet. He is the slave whose master tortured him with burning stones to force him back into disbelief. And he answered only, one. This is the immortality Islam gave to Bilal. Before Islam, Bilal was nothing more than a slave, herding his master's camels, paid in handfuls of dates, destined to disappear into oblivion. But his faith and the greatness of the religion he embraced gave him a place among the noble, the honored, the great. Many heroes of history never achieved even a fraction of the legacy that Bilal achieved. Once the world believed that a slave like Bilal, without lineage, without power, without ownership of his life, could never become anything. And yet here he stands in history, defying every assumption. For he carried a faith no chains could break. And that faith made him the first voice of Islam. Bilal ibn Rabah. 3 words, and an entire civilization stands in respect. Bilal. When the slave refused to kneel, Bilal was an Abyssinian by his mother, a woman of dark skin, whose fate had made her a slave among the people of Banu Jumah in Mecca. Bilal grew up in chains. His days were identical, barren, empty, no right to today, no hope for tomorrow. Then the name Muhammad began to move through Mecca. Bilal heard it in the houses of his masters, in the gatherings of Umayyah ibn Khalaf, one of the chiefs of Banu Jumah, the tribe that owned him. They heard their conversations overflowing with rage and contempt. But through their anger, Bilal's ears caught something else. Descriptions of a new message, unfamiliar to the world he knew. He heard them speak of Muhammad's honesty, his loyalty, his character, his integrity, his unmatched devotion to worship. He heard them argue among themselves. Muhammad was never a liar, nor mad. But today we must label him as such, so that people do not follow him. He heard them admit, we do not reject him for what he says. We reject him because the Prophet came from Banu Hashim, not from us. And Bilal listened, until one day he saw the light of God. He went to Muhammad, peace be upon him, and embraced Islam. The news of his conversion exploded among his masters. The heads of Banu Jumah spun in fury. Arrogance and pride crushed their reason. For Umayyah ibn Khalaf, the Islam of a slave was an insult no bloodline could forgive. He told himself, the sun will not set today until the Islam of this runaway slave sets with it. But the sun did not set on Bilal's faith. It set instead on the arrogance of Mecca. They dragged Bilal into the desert, stripped him naked, laid him upon burning stones. They ordered him, leave Muhammad's religion. Bilal answered only, one. They threatened him. Call upon your God to save you from the torment I am about to unleash. Bilal replied, If my Lord tests me through your hands, then I will endure with a patience no Arab has ever known. And what is your torture compared to the punishment of God?" His master spat, "You son of the black woman." Bilal remained unbroken, for Bilal had discovered a truth that would echo through every generation. The freedom of conscience and the dignity of the soul are not for sale, not for gold, and not for pain. In that desert, Islam did not merely win a believer. Humanity won its voice. Bilal, the man who taught humanity how to be free. Through this enslaved, oppressed Abyssinian, the Prophet, peace be upon him, created a teacher for all humanity, a living lesson in how to honor the conscience and defend its freedom and sovereignty. Day after day, they dragged Bilal into the burning noon, when the desert becomes a killing furnace. They threw him naked upon the scorching stones. Then they rolled a massive, blazing rock, so heavy that several men were needed to move it, and crushed it upon his chest. This savage torture was repeated daily until even some of his executioners felt pity. At last, they offered him a bargain. Just say one good word about our gods, one word to save your life, one word to preserve our pride and keep Quraysh from saying we were defeated by a slave. Even that single word, which he could have spoken from the edge of his lips and bought his life, Bilal refused. Instead, he chanted his immortal hymn, "One, one." They shouted, "Say what we say." He answered them with a cutting calm, "My tongue does not know how to say that." They left him in the molten heat until evening. Then they tied a rope around his neck and ordered their children to drag him through the mountains of Mecca and its streets. And Bilal's tongue never ceased. One, one. When night fell, they bargained again. "Say something kind about our gods. Say, 'My Lord is Al-Lat and Al-Uzza.' We are exhausted. We are the ones being tortured now, not you." Bilal shook his head. "One? One?" Umayyah ibn Khalaf exploded in fury. "By Al-Lat and Al-Uzza, I will make you a lesson for slaves and masters." Bilal answered with the certainty of a believer and the majesty of a saint. "One. One." Others tried persuasion. "Leave him, Umayyah. He is our mother's slave. He will not shame us by becoming the talk of Quraysh." Bilal looked at their lying faces, smiled like the light of dawn, and said quietly, with words that shook the earth, "One, one." Morning returned. The burning noon approached. Bilal was dragged again to the desert, steadfast, unbroken, unyielding. Then Abu Bakr arrived. He shouted at them, "Will you kill a man for saying, 'My Lord is God'?" He turned to Umayyah and said, "Take whatever price you want. Set him free for the sake of God." The merchants of Quraysh realized that selling him was more profitable than killing him. They sold him to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr freed him immediately. As Abu Bakr led Bilal away into freedom, Umayyah sneered, "By Al-Lat and Al-Uzza, if you had refused to buy him except for 1 ounce of gold, I would have sold him to you." Abu Bakr replied, "By God, even if you had demanded 100 ounces, I would have paid it." He took his brother in faith to the messenger of God and gave him the news of his freedom. And it was a day of victory, not only for Bilal, but for humanity itself. Just one word. They leaned over him as he lay on the burning stones. "Listen, Bilal, we are not asking you to curse Muhammad. Just mention Al-Lat and Al-Uzza the way you mention your God. One word. That's all." His lips were cracked from heat. His body was crushed beneath the stone. They pleaded, "Just one word, Bilal. Say, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza." Bilal's voice was weak, but his soul was unbreakable. He answered, "My tongue does not know how." Silence fell. Then from the depths of his chest the only word that remained alive in him rose again. One. One. And history has been repeating that answer ever since. From one to the voice of Islam. After the migration of the Prophet and the Muslims to Medina, and once the community found stability, the question arose, who would call the people to prayer 5 times a day, lifting the words of God across the horizon? It was Bilal. Bilal, the man who 13 years earlier had cried, "One, one," while being burned and crushed under torture. Now, by the Prophet's choice, he became the first caller to prayer in Islam. With his clear, trembling, powerful voice, he filled hearts with faith and the air with awe. God is greater. God is greater. There is no God but God. Then came war. Quraysh marched on Medina. Steel met steel. And Bilal stood among the fighters in the first battle of Islam, Badr. A battle whose rallying cry by the command of the Prophet was, "One, one." Quraysh sent forth its elite, its pride, its lords. Among them was Umayyah ibn Khalaf, Bilal's former master, the man who had tortured him with savage cruelty. Umayyah had intended to stay behind. Fear had seized him, but his friend Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt mocked him publicly, threw burning incense before him and sneered, "Perfume yourself, you are nothing but a woman." Shamed, Umayyah went to war, and fate was waiting. For Uqba, who once urged Umayyah to torture Bilal, was now the very man who drove him toward the battlefield, where both would meet their end. History has a strange sense of justice. As the battle erupted, the Muslim lines thundered with the cry, "One, one." Umayyah's heart collapsed. That word, the word he once heard from a slave beneath burning stones, had become the slogan of an entire nation. Faith had grown, chains had shattered, and time had turned. As the battle neared its end, Umayyah spotted Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf and clung to him, begging for protection, asking to be taken prisoner. Abd al-Rahman agreed and began escorting him through the chaos toward the captives. Then Bilal saw him. Bilal shouted with a voice that cut through the battlefield, "The head of disbelief, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, I will not survive if he survives." He raised his sword. Abd al-Rahman cried out, "Bilal, he is my prisoner." Bilal answered with burning certainty, "A prisoner, while the battlefield still rages, and his sword drips with the blood of the believers he was killing moments ago? This is mockery of justice." This man had mocked justice long enough. The hands Umayyah once bound with chains, the hands he once tortured, were now free, and destiny had kept its appointment. From the burning sand to the roof of the Kaaba, Bilal knew he could not break through the protection of his brother in faith, Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf, alone. So he raised his voice across the battlefield. "O defenders of God, the head of disbelief, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, I will not live if he lives." A wave of Muslims surged forward, their swords glistening with destiny. They surrounded Umayyah and his son. Abd al-Rahman could do nothing. The crowd tore his arms away. Umayyah fell beneath the blades. Bilal looked once more upon the body of the man who had burned, crushed, and humiliated him. Then he turned away, running, his voice soaring across the battlefield. "One, one." Some may ask about forgiveness, but this was not a meeting in peace. It was a battlefield. Steel was raised, lives were being taken, and Umayyah was still striking at Muslims when Bilal found him. This was not the hour for sermons, this was the hour of survival. Years passed. Mecca was opened. The Prophet, peace be upon him, entered the city at the head of 10,000 believers, his head lowered in gratitude. he went directly to the Kaaba. 360 idols had crowded its sacred space. Now truth had arrived and falsehood collapsed. Truth has come and falsehood has vanished. Falsehood is bound to vanish. From that day on, no human would bow to stone. No soul would kneel to idols. No conscience would belong to anything but the one God. The Prophet entered the Kaaba with Bilal. Inside stood a statue of Abraham casting divining arrows. The Prophet was angered. May God curse them. Our father Abraham never practiced this. He was neither Jew nor Christian, but a devoted monotheist. Then he turned to Bilal, climb the roof, and call the people to prayer. Time seemed to freeze. Mecca fell silent. Thousands of believers stood motionless as the voice of Bilal rose across the city. God is greater, God is greater. Inside their homes, the former masters of Mecca trembled. Is this the same Bilal, our slave, our servant, the man we tortured? Is this Muhammad, whom we expelled, fought, and tried to destroy, now standing above us with 10,000 hearts? Moments earlier, he had said, "Go, you are free." Now the call to prayer spread through Mecca like the breath of spring. The world had changed, and on the roof of the Kaaba stood the man who once lay naked on burning stones. This is how history corrects itself. Bilal, the voice that never forgot. Among those watching from the courtyard of the Kaaba stood 3 men: Abu Sufyan, who had embraced Islam only hours earlier, Atab ibn Asid, and Al-Harith ibn Hisham, who had not yet accepted the faith. As Bilal's voice rose over Mecca, Atab muttered, "God honored my father by not letting him live to hear this Abyssinian slave calling the prayer." Al-Harith said, "By God, if I knew Muhammad were truly right, I would follow him." Abu Sufyan, the shrewdest of them, replied, "I will say nothing. If I speak, these stones would betray me." When the Prophet, peace be upon him, left the Kaaba, he looked at them and said, his eyes shining with divine light, "I know what you said." Then he repeated their very words to them. They cried, "We bear witness that you are the messenger of God." "By God, no one heard us say this. How did you know?" The words of the Prophet's first address in Mecca settled deep into their hearts. God has removed from you the pride of ignorance and arrogance in ancestry. All people are from Adam, and Adam is from dust. Bilal remained with the Prophet, peace be upon him, witnessing every major event, calling the prayer, preserving the symbols of this great faith that lifted him from darkness to light, from slavery to freedom. And yet Bilal remained Bilal, humble, gentle, seeing himself only as the Abyssinian who was once a slave. Once, when he sought marriage for himself and his brother, he said to the family, "I am Bilal, and this is my brother Ubaid. We were misguided, God guided us. We were slaves, God freed us. If you accept us, praise be to God. If you refuse us, God is still great." When the Prophet, peace be upon him, departed to the highest companion and Abu Bakr became caliph, Bilal went to him and said, "O successor of the Messenger of God, I heard the Prophet say, the best deed of the believer is striving in the path of God. I wish to guard the frontiers until I die." Abu Bakr replied, "Who will call the prayer for us, Bilal?" Bilal answered, his eyes overflowing with tears, "I will not call the prayer for anyone after the Messenger of God." Abu Bakr said, "Stay and call it for us." Bilal replied, "If you freed me for yourself, then command me. But if you freed me for God, then leave me to what I was freed for." Abu Bakr said, "I freed you for God, O Bilal." Bilal departed. Some say he went to Syria, others that he remained in Medina until Abu Bakr's death, then left for Syria during Umar's rule. but all agree. He dedicated the rest of his life to standing guard on the frontiers of Islam. He never again raised the adhan fully, for whenever he reached the words, "Muhammad is the messenger of God," every eye would overflow with tears. Once, during Umar's visit to Syria, the people begged him, "Ask Bilal to call the prayer for us, just once." Umar asked him. Bilal climbed and called the adhan. The companions who had known the Prophet wept as they had never wept before, and Umar wept more than them all. Bilal died in Syria, standing guard in the path of God, as he had wished. Today, in the soil of Damascus, rests the body of one of the greatest men humanity has ever known, a man whose life proved that faith can break every chain